This is my case study presentation by Megan Hance. After reading the case study, these are the things that I know. I know that Roosevelt High School is in a very affluent area and it's located in a large city. I know that the parents of the students are wealthy professionals who provide their children with the latest fashions and technologies, and they're very used to having money and nice things. I know that Dr. Stephen Forbes is the principal, and he's been the principal there for 9 years. He's received many awards, such as Principal of the Year in the past. He's very well respected by the parents, and he has a good relationship with the community and parents. I know that he only hires the most prestigious teachers to work at his school. One of his newest hires was Mrs. Walker for the specialized science areas, such as zoology. I know that Mrs. Walker completed her undergraduate, graduate, and then one more year of postgraduate work before she began to teach. She was hired as a first-year teacher at Roosevelt. Mrs. Walker's classes were said to be very difficult by the students and the students' parents. Parents have called to complain to the principal about her classes, worried that their children will receive low grades. Some of the students in her classes were students that wished to be valedictorian and so on. So the parents were very worried about their students receiving low grades in her class. Dr. Forbes had previously given Mrs. Walker techniques to reduce the students' stress levels, but she had not implemented them in her classroom or her instruction as of yet. I also know that Mrs. Walker came from her parents' house after a 3-day weekend. When she got home, she checked her email, and she saw an email with the website link, and on the website it was posted, "Who wants Mrs. Walker to disappear?" She immediately called the principal and sent him the email and the website for him to see for himself. Dr. Forbes looked at the link and said that he thought maybe the email was a prank and asked her to think of any students that were unhappy with her in the last week that might have done this. Mrs. Walker immediately thought of a student named Randy. Next, I know that Dr. Forbes said he would print the email and would meet with the students and Mrs. Walker in the morning, and Mrs. Walker said she did not feel safe after being threatened like that, so she slept at her parents' house that night. What do I need to know? I need to know why Mrs. Walker didn't implement the techniques that were explained to her by Dr. Forbes before. What were the reasons she felt like she didn't need to do that? Was she aware that most of the students were feeling that her class was very hard and the parents were very upset? Did she know about the complaints to the principal? Had she tried to improve the situation to help her students after hearing about the complaints, if she did know about them? You also need to know who sent the email and made the website. Can we find where the email was sent from? Were we able to find this information without invading the privacy of the student? And what's the district policy for issues like this regarding the internet? Is it a zero tolerance policy? What kind of things are in place? So the problems are, there was a threatening email sent to a teacher at Roosevelt High School. We did not know the sender of the email that sent it to the teacher, and there was a website created for multiple students and people to see, but we do not know who created this website. We don't know the policies in place, so we kind of don't know where to go from there. In my plan of action, step 1, the administrator is going to meet with the students the following day. First, they're going to meet without Mrs. Walker present because the students might feel more comfortable opening up to the principal, telling what things they might know or they have heard without her being there. The principal is going to meet with each student individually. Students might not want to fess up names of their friends or things they've heard if it involves their friends. If there's other kids in the room, they don't really want to be the tattletale, so meeting individually would make them probably more comfortable. And then as an administrator, I would create an open door policy for students to continue to provide information if they're not going to give it at the first meeting. Maybe they're nervous, but they think about it and the next day they come back and want to say what they know. So creating an open door policy that they're always welcome and you know you're always going to maintain confidentiality with what they tell you. The next step, step 2, investigate by following up any leads that you found from the interviews or any information that you've heard. I would notify the superintendent and the district lawyer about the situation for any guidance they may have. The lawyer may tell you legal things to do or to not do, and it's always just good for the superintendent to be in the loop in case they hear about it from parents, you always want to be the person that tells them. You're going to meet with the tech team to see if you can find where the email was sent from or who created the website without invading the privacy of the student and legal consequences. And then you need to find out if this happened on a school computer, on school property, or from a home computer. Step 3, you're going to address the situation with the students and the rest of the school. You're going to determine who is responsible for the email and the website. You're going to meet with the team to find appropriate consequences for the actions. Important people on the team would be the superintendent, obviously yourself as the administrator, maybe the lawyer, different people to get as many different perspectives and opinions to make sure that you're making a consequence that's in the best interest for everybody. And then you're going to notify the student and the parents of the situation and the consequences. Step 4, you're going to plan for the future. Like I said before, we needed to know if there was policy in place. Do they have a zero tolerance policy, things like that. So to plan for the future, if the internet policies weren't clear, we're going to revise the policies. If they were clear and they were just broken, we're going to review the policies with the students and the staffs and also possibly the parents, community. We're going to provide Mrs. Walker with some support, make sure she feels like was treated fairly and she still wants to be in the school community. We're going to monitor the students' internet activities, maybe go back and teach some responsibility on the internet, things like that to the students. Resolve the issues. How do we promote the success of all students? We're going to conduct the interview or the investigation and interviews in a fair manner, make sure everybody is able to give their opinion and what they know. We're going to handle issues, keeping confidentiality in mind. Like I said, the open door policy for students and staff, keeping confidentiality with that. Maintain high standards for all students and staff. Make sure they know the expectations. Review policies with students, staff, and parents. Open door policy, like I said. Have a zero tolerance policy. Make it very clear that the students and the staff and parents all know. And then possibly create a mentor-mentee program for staff to be able to help with classroom issues and things like that. An example from that list of how I would better develop these. First, the mentor-mentee program. Mrs. Walker could have benefited from the help of a classroom teacher helping her with guidance to implement classroom techniques and support. She might needed support during this incident, maybe after, and then this might not have happened if she had the guidance of another teacher that was an older, had more knowledge, more experience. This would ensure the student's success with better informed and comfortable teachers, making sure that they knew exactly what to do and had other resources to go with. The second way I would implement these zero tolerance policy, in this case study, it was kind of hard to know what an appropriate consequence would be without a policy stated. So with this policy implemented, the students and the parents would already be aware of what the consequence would be, and that was all part of my plan for the future and my plan of action. The third, open door policy for students and staff. Students and parents had previously stated complaints about Mrs. Walker. They felt comfortable to do that, but it's also important for your staff to feel comfortable to state their side and their opinion as well. Being a new teacher, Ms. Walker might not have had that relationship with an administrator, so it's important to make sure that your staff feels comfortable so they can, you can make sure you know what's going on. Debriefing the problem. What was I thinking during this all? I always had in my mind legal consequences, the students and the staff's safety, making sure that my teachers felt supported. I was always thinking about the future and how we could prevent this from happening, and I was thinking about Roosevelt's reputation. I was feeling scared for Mrs. Walker. She was obviously very upset and scared. She didn't want to sleep alone at her own house, so I was scared for her. I was nervous about any legal consequences that could have happened. I was disappointed in the student that felt like this was the best way to handle the issue. And I was anxious for the news of this issue to reach the staff, students, parents, and the community, being that Roosevelt is in such a good area and is highly respected. As an administrator, the parents highly respected me, so I would want to make sure that I upheld that. I was valuing the high expectations I had set for the staff and the students. I was valuing that the students would be honest with me collaboration with school teams to come up with the best plan of action, and the culture of the school. Issues still unresolved or need to still be investigated. Mrs. Walker's future, I'm not sure how she would feel after this whole incident, so that's kind of still under investigation or unresolved. Is the implementation of zero policy effective? Has it worked? Does everyone understand how, all the different aspects of it? Were all the facts presented in this issue, on this issue with the investigation? And what does the future look like for Roosevelt and its policies? Demonstrating integrity and ethical behavior. To do so, I kept all parties' feelings in mind while making the decisions for this case. I gathered all information before making the decision. I kept confidentiality throughout the process with the students and parents and staff's interviews, and I determined an appropriate consequence based on those things. I acted fairly, equitably, with dignity and respect. I did not jump to conclusions or make judgments until all the information was collected from all parties involved. I listened carefully to all of the parties. I gave everyone a chance to explain their side of the story by implementing the open door policy, and provided support to Ms. Walker after the incident was resolved with the mentor-mentee and just support for her. I demonstrated personal and professional code of ethics by keeping the confidentiality. I followed the school's policy and the vision, and I promoted what was best for all students and all staff. The standards that were involved in this case study, Standard 5, that administrators must demonstrate themselves acting with integrity, fairness, and an ethical manner, just like in the previous slides had stated. I kept the confidentiality. I was always looking for what was best for the students. And also Standard 3 was involved by promoting the safety for all students and staff. I wanted to make sure that everyone felt safe, and that was always something that I was worrying about or was on my mind during the case.